You did acknowledge and say that people of color come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that do not prioritize education much. But instead of making a suggestion on how...
So one thing I liked about Charlie Kirk, I like the fact that he was brave. I said that already. I like the fact that he was bold. He was fearless. Those are great traits to have. You know, the fact that he was shot, I hated it. That is horrible that we're still doing that in America today. You know, I'm thinking he's opening the room for free speech and letting people express themselves, and then we can have these debates. But the fact that he was shot, that is too sad. But this is one video of Charlie Kirk doing what he does, debating college kids. And I think this is really interesting because he had this one debate with this black girl. And I think this is a debate that is probably stirring a little bit of, turmoil within the black community, because to me, personally, I'm a black man. I feel like Charlie Kirk definitely created room to have this discussion and this debate. His life should have never been taken because of his point of view. I did not agree with everything he said, but a lot of what he said was correct. And we'll be having this discussion till somebody decides to go pull the trigger. But anyhow, though, let's watch this video and see how he reacted to this girl and see her point of view, because I felt like they both had a strong point of view. Let's watch this. Let's get into it.
You did acknowledge and say that people of color come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that do not prioritize education much. But instead of making a suggestion on how to help those communities and continue to build those communities up, you continue to say that our institutions are becoming less excellent. And I'm confused as to what your definition of excellence is. Is that because white males aren't necessarily, in your opinion, getting accepted as in a higher rate, even though they technically are, because 41% of college admitted students are of the white race?
It should be higher than that, yeah.
Based on what? Where are you getting the statistics? I just want to understand.
It's a good question. The Supreme Court did a whole case on this, and it ruled against affirmative action, and we saw the books of Harvard. So
I don't want to cut you off. May I know for future reference, so I can understand where you're coming from and get more context, could I know the Supreme Court case?
Yeah, so the name, 2.5 years ago, I think it was something out of California. Someone look it up. You could use Grok or ChatGPT.
If somebody could please look that up for me. Thank you.
So we saw the data out of Harvard. Harvard was the test case, and effectively, approximating, but a white male had to get about a 30% higher test score to even be considered than an equivalent black student.
And when was this?
Over 30 years. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. So basically, for a black student, they could do 30% worse on their standardized scores than an equivalent white student.
And you don't think that has any outside factors to do with it?
Well, that's not the point. The point is whether or not.
But how is that not the point?
Because I don't believe we should accommodate based on outside factors. You do.
Well, I do, because I believe in progression. And I feel like you have stated in multiple of your videos, which I do have a quote.
No, fair enough. I'm just making sure we understand we disagree. I don't think we should change the rules of the game to accommodate.
What were the rules of the game?
Well, the rules of the game are that you should be treated fairly and equally, right?
For sure.
That's an American principle.
And I agree with that completely.
Got it. So, therefore, a white male should not be treated differently than a black male.
But when you come from a different...
Doesn't matter. Equal treatment or not. It's not whether or not you were said mean things when you grew up or whether your dad was a gangbanger. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not saying that's not the outside factors I'm talking about.
It doesn't matter what the outside factors are.
But can I explain where I'm coming from?
But understand, I'm going to finish and I'll let you talk.
Okay, of course.
Equal treatment is regardless of any sort of sob story you could put on before it. Equal treatment. Test score, test score.
And I completely agree with that. But I also come from a predominantly white town, so I understand what you're trying to say. In my district, we have so much funding, and I live in the Florida Keys, so there's a lot of funding that comes to my school, and you can drive 30 miles north and you end up in Homestead, where they have a fraction of the funding that we have, and they don't have as much of the same testing instructors and people to help them, and have as much of the same outside resources. And then you can keep going another 30 miles and you end up in Miami, where all the private schools are, and they get even more funding than where I come from. Obviously I ended up where I am today because I continue to push through, and I didn't let any outside factors affect me. But at the end of the day, I kept going, and some people don't have that same ability.
First of all, in Florida, every public school gets the same amount of money. Okay, there's an equal funding across the board.
But you also get donations from the people in your
community.
Fair
enough, but Florida has...
And I know for a fact that my community gets many donations.
Florida has the most You could use equitable funding structure of any school and as universal school choice, basically. So that's number one. Number two, explain to me why, when we're admitting people for a job, should it just be what's on that piece of paper, or should race play into the factor?
So I know that your argument is mediocrity. I forgot. I don't
Mediocrity?
really. Okay, yeah, and I know that, and I also believe in quotas as well, but I don't think that it should be one and one, but they should go hand in hand. Because at the end of the day, if I have just as good as a resume as somebody next to me, I wanna understand where you're getting that jobs are just taking people because they're a woman, because they are black. I just want to see. And I understand what you're trying to say because of course, with affirmative action and DEI, that does give them an upper hand. But where does it say that you take somebody just because of that color?
All over the place. Capitol Street Partners back in the summer of 2022 said that they will not hire white men for internships. That's one example of thousands I could give.
But because of how many people are in there, how many people in position?
No, because they wanted to be. Again, that's irrelevant. It does not matter if you have an internship and everyone is a white man. If they're all qualified, that's great. It doesn't matter if they're all Asian or all black. It should be what merit qualification gets the people into that position.
And of course, but if this school only wanted white people to attend.
No, good, like excellent qualified people, and if they end up majority white, who cares? Why does that matter?
I don't think that matters. I'm saying that affirmative action.
No, you are saying it matters.
I'm saying that, but I'm not saying for the white male or the black race or the Asian race or the Indian race, or understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that it works in favor for any race and any sex. It works, and it does 1,000%. And I don't understand where you're getting that information.
It is anti-white racism that was in the fiber of our laws that is now getting away thanks to President Donald Trump. Where if you were a white man, especially to apply for internships, jobs, going to college, that it was significantly harder to get those jobs, to get into those practices, because there were quotas that made it easier for people of other skin colors with lower standards to be able to get those positions. We agree there's only so many slots in a college, right? There's only so many positions in an internship. It's a limited supply.
I completely agree.
It is scarcity. So when you have a scarce resource, you have to decide how you're going to divvy up that scarce resource.
For sure.
In a DEI model, they're going to say, okay, we're not going to do any more than 30% white, and then we'll do 15%. And so you kind of come up with these quotas. Therefore, they end up saying, well, what happens if the 15% black is not qualified? They don't care, which ends up happening far too often. Or what happens if the...
Can you give me examples of cases?
Yeah, air traffic control is actually a really good example. We now have all the documents that show that we went on a hiring spree to have more black air traffic controllers. There's a huge lawsuit about this, 15, 16, 17, where the standards for air traffic control have dropped so dramatically, and you're kind of seeing some of the effects of that, potentially. And again, it's in almost every single corporate practice, every single college institution. But it just kind of comes down to more of a moral argument that I have, which is that if you have something based on merit, I don't care if it's all black, all Asian, all white. It's an excellent group is what I want, not a diverse group. I care about excellence, not diversity. Because I do not believe diversity is a strength.
So Charlie Kirk does not believe diversity is a strength. You see why this could affect how black people think about what he's pushing. Like, not like what he's saying is bad. He's saying he wants the best person for the job, right? So, but coming from a place where some segments of the population is being, I wouldn't say oppressed, but they did not have the same hand, like in the sense of like people coming from a poorer background did not have as much opportunity as people coming from a richer background. So basically, if we're doing it based on based on best man for the job or whatever, right? So let me say somebody's dad is a doctor. They've been doctors for 4 generations. And you have somebody who this is the first time somebody decided to go to college in their family. Who do you think has more of an advantage? Of course, the person who's had 4 generations of doctors in their families and lawyers has a better playing field, because definitely he probably went to the best schools. It's more educated. He has somebody filling up his time after school with more after school programs and lessons that would definitely help him further his education, compared to somebody who this is his first time going to college. Dad did not go to college. Mom didn't go to college. Drugs, jail, whatever you want to call it, but that child has been affected. So when it comes to best man for the job, of course that child is not gonna be able to play or compete with the other kids who have both parents, grew up in a home where they had a lot. And, it's more privileged, basically. So what the woman is saying is, so we're just going to ignore the kids that have been oppressed. We're going to ignore children of slavery, children of slave descendants who did not have the same amount of resources that people who had more privileged background had. we're just gonna overlook that and just say, hey, look, I understand your dad, you didn't have your dad or your mom in your life, and you guys were broke and you didn't have any money, but you want to go to Harvard just like the other kid who wants to go to Harvard. Okay, we're gonna figure out who is gonna qualify for Harvard. So basically, who has the best test score? Of course, the kid who had both parents and went to a good school and had more money potentially is gonna have the better test score. Why the other kid is gonna try because he really wants to improve himself and hopefully get his family out of the mess that they've been in, right? But of course, he's not gonna get a chance to even do that because his grades may not be as good as the other kid who had all the resources. That is where she's coming from. So at the end of the day, if you're saying the best man for the job, the best qualified person, especially when you're talking about in a situation of pilots, right? Airline pilots. Oh, you want the best person to fly the plane. Of course, somebody who seemed like they're well qualified is flying the plane and they have all the resources, so they seem like, oh my God, he's really good. Why the other black kid who wants to also be a pilot didn't have enough resources, didn't go to one of the best schools, didn't have all the training that he needs? Of course, he would never get a chance. He just became a pilot for no reason because he would never get a job doing what he went to school for. But coming from where Charlie Kirk is coming from, it doesn't matter. Life sucks, dude. Suit yourself. And where the woman is coming from, it's like, you got to give this guy an opportunity so that way we could even the playing field, right? That makes a point, right? We got to give this guy an opportunity so we could even the playing field eventually in the future. But at the end of the day, if a more qualified person is applying for a job and you're going to overlook him because you're just trying to even the playing field, that seems like you're discriminating because of skin color. You see what I mean? So on both sides of the aisle, they both have strong points. You cannot ignore the kid who was not as fortunate, and now you want him to compete at an elite level, right? And then the other guy who was very fortunate, right? Now you're like, no, I'm going to look past him and give it to somebody who's not as fortunate because I want to even the playing field. So at the end of the day, they both have a strong point. If you decide to go DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, right? I don't know if that's what it stands for, but I think that's what it stands for. If you want to go in that route, right? In that sense, basically you're evening the playing field and you're giving people more opportunity to, do what they do. And then you're overlooking people who are more qualified, right? So it's people who are more qualified are being looked over to get people because you want diversity. And then on the other hand, if you decide to go with what Charlie Kirk is pushing, you're going to look over and overlook people who didn't have the same playing field, and now you want them to compete at an elite level. And of course, they're not going to be able to compete with those who had better education and had better resources, right? And if you go on the rates where Charlie Kirk is saying, let's go with the best man for the job, the best man for the job is going to always be the one who had better resources and better education. So that means, and which are usually, more white people. And then that means the winning class just keep winning, overlooking the class that's been significantly oppressed, right? But if you go according to what the girl is pushing, meaning people who are more qualified are being overlooked just because you want to help the poor, to get them to a point where they have the same playing field, right? They both have a point. Which side do I stand? Where do I stand? Honestly, I do think the best man for the job, that's always good. Like if I had a company, who would I want to hire? I would hire the person who's more qualified, right? Right? Because that's my business. I want to succeed. I want to make money. But if I'm looking at it as on a bigger picture, like I'm trying to create a nation where it seems fair, where everyone has a chance to win, then I may start looking over, well, I understand you're the best man for the job, but this particular job, does it require technical skill that the next person who is not the best man cannot do it? I mean, it depends on the position. Like when it comes to like airline pilots or whatever, trust me, I feel like the best man for the job should get that job. But when it comes to like nursing, teaching, bus drivers, mailmen, senators, those are not like highly skilled positions where it's like, oh, if I made one wrong move, people would die. No, those are those kind of positions. So there are certain fields where you're like, look, this certain field, the best man for the job should be in this field. But there are other fields where you're like, I understand you're better qualified, but this is not a position where it's like, dude, trust me. With a little bit of training, anybody could do certain jobs. And those kind of jobs, you may want to go with equity, go with, what's the name, DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion for those kind of jobs, because you could train anybody to do that particular job. So, but there's certain jobs that hey, look, we need the best person because people's life depend on this. Then you go for the best man for the job. Anyhow, though, yeah, Charlie Kirk's assassination, that is like horrible. I like Charlie Kirk as a person, like I said before. Of course, I'm sure there are some things I'm saying that people don't agree with. I don't think I should get shot for it. That's just how I feel, you know? So I don't think anybody should be getting killed for their opinion, even if you don't agree with it. Thanks for watching. Respect.